News that a mortal man and his army had slain an elder dragon shocked the world. These monstrous beasts, the oldest and most powerful of the dragons, were thought to be untouchable. Their chitinous armor could not be pierced by even the most powerful of Khazad-made ballistae, nor by the most powerful of mages. Every army led against one has been laid to rest in a bed of cinder. Nobody knows who St. Lawrence is. Of course, a man with the strength and ability to create weapons such as that needed to kill an elder dragon must be a Khazad, they say. The Quendi, in rebuttal, say that somebody so clever and in touch with nature, in order to defeat an elder dragon, must be one of them. The Terrans, by contrast, say that St. Lawrence must have been one of them, on account of the wide skill set and charisma needed to lead an army to accomplish a feat such as this. Regardless of who St. Lawrence is, be he Khazad, Quendi, Terran, Hin, or even Uruk-hai, or if he is from Isengard, Valois, Frostock, Vongnau, or Varakov, the resultant explosion in ambition from the nations of the world was palpable. For the first time, empires, kingdoms, even duchies were given hope that they might be able to rid themselves of the Draconic menace. Mobilization orders were given, new technology researched, alliances made, and differences were settled. The whole of humanity, regardless of race, was at war. The year is zero ante-Laurentium. The Draconic Wars have begun. Dragons have begun to be exterminated faster than they can reproduce, and as their numbers dwindle, only the strongest remain, making each day of the war harder than the last. Should humanity fail, the dragons will only recover and become an even bigger threat than they were before. The investment into research and civil infrastructure to facilitate the war effort has been felt across every corner of every nation, including their vast colonial empires. Auckton has seen a surge in investment as a result. The dirt roads and crowded neighborhoods are not productive in a total war environment. Efforts to redevelop have been redoubled. As the West Odresh Company is dissolved to make way for a new system of colonial administrators, the military is pressed for a university to be built to teach the children of all promising citizens of the district to learn skills required for warfare, such as medicine, reading, and for those capable of using it, arcana. As the world descends into an inferno, welcome, once again, to Auckton. Heyo, folks, welcome back to Auckton. For the first time in a very long time, I'm actually going to be able to post a video uh, on the schedule that I originally set for myself for one video every week. Turns out that college is hard, and it's difficult to maintain that kind of schedule when you're busy with other stuff. So, to start this episode, I am working on the University of Auckton. This is one of the first proper universities in the New World. Of course, there were, schools and other institutions to allow people to become educated, especially aristocrats and nobles who dared venture into the colonies. But this is going to be the first large uh university for anybody who shows the merit to actually be able to go to, instead of, those colleges that existed before. Um, I imagine a lot of nobles and aristocrats that were able to send children to university beforehand mostly sent their children overseas to study in the universities back in the home isles, simply because they're older and probably better than whatever the colonies can provide. I'm using these couple of assets. I forget the asset creator, but I believe they're called Fisk University. You can look them up on the Steam Workshop. They, I found, are pretty darn useful. They don't have that many props, which means that I'm able to just sort of merge them together like this to create different shapes. As somebody currently in university, I kind of have an idea of how a university is laid out. Usually, it, in these older universities, it seems like, especially the older, more urban ones, excuse me, it seems like they were confined, if that makes sense. They had their property and they didn't really expand beyond it. And that's the case for the university that I go to as well. Um, of course, the university has been expanding over the years, so new things are being constantly added. But you can still find the older buildings that make up this core that wrap around the central area of the property. So for the most part, I'm just trying to place these in a way where I think makes sense. Using these smaller dirt roads to kind of provide pathways inside of the actual property of the university. Most of these are for school, I imagine, obviously. But some of them would also be for residents living. I imagine there's cafeterias, galleys, etc. These old universities were not good, especially by our modern understanding of what a university should be, of course. Um, a lot of the staff lives on property. Uh, I imagine some universities still do that today, but the professors and teachers would be essentially residents of the university property. Of course, I mean, as an example, Isaac Newton um, lived at the university he worked and studied at. For the life of me, I can't remember which one that is. That's that good old Louisiana education system coming at you. But as I recall, he lived at the university he worked at until the day he died, um, which made for a very insular life, which of course he's very famous for having these days. But yeah, universities back in this era, both in our world and in this one, were not as the ideas of science were not as cemented as they are now. So, obviously, I mean, the people back then were still intelligent. It's just we stand today on the cumulative knowledge of all the generations that came before, and they lacked this knowledge. So a lot of colleges would have very basic courses. Medicine was not as we know it today. It was herbal care and how to saw off a leg as quickly as possible. Um, Warfare, of course, is going to be a big part of the University of Auckton. This school was in no small part funded by the military establishment of Frostock as a way to make the colonists productive fighters. So, as I'm going around here, I decided I wanted to try to make this more detailed than a lot of projects I've worked on. So I'm actually going around here and trying to properly place out these fences, um, allowing pathways to entrances to buildings and all of that good stuff, along with still placing trees around and making the university a nice place to be. The university is actually going to be one of very few places with actual, like, pristine lawns and whatnot, not trampled grass as you've seen in a lot of places around the colony so far. Because the university would be very highly funded by the military, They want to be able to make it as appealing as possible to both the colonists and whoever is rich enough to send their children there, rather than having to risk prospective noblemen's children being sent overseas and dying in a shipwreck or what have you. Um, Educate them in place, that way they can be more productive to the war effort when they're actually shipped off in perhaps a better vessel than what they would have been otherwise. So after placing around those fences, I'm going around here and placing these um, red and yellow flowers, adjusting that building there. Red and yellow, I have kind of decided is the primary, like, official colors of Auckton as a whole. I imagine these plants are native to the island, and as a result have kind of taken up a position of pride among the populace. I've already used these flowers quite a lot in the aristocratic estates I've made before, both the two former plantation owning houses and the governor's mansion. So yeah, I placed a bed of these red flowers, and then I'm coming back over and placing the yellow ones. Just to add to that, like, prestige that I want this university to kind of have, I decided to use hedges quite substantially around the property. Like I said, I'm really wanting this place to look as nice as possible, while also still being sort of period appropriate. Uh, but yeah, what else is there to say about the university? Um, it wasn't until rather recently, in terms of, like, in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't until recently that universities actually became, I suppose, good at what they do. Uh, for example, everybody knows of John Harvey Kellogg, and he was actually taught at a university in New York about what was called the water cure, where essentially if you just used water and a lot of it, you would be cured of literally anything. So, what am I doing now? Procedural objects is not a mod that I am used to at all. This is actually my first project where I'm actually using it any amount, really. The first time I've used it was on the Star Fort a few episodes ago, where I used it to help build the wooden decking of the fort. But this is the first time I'm trying to really kind of sell that this is or really trying to sell a or modify something quite a lot to make it into something a little more useful. So this gate that comes in a lovely prop pack for fences uh, was way too small to fit over this road. Even though it's a very small road, um, it definitely needed to be warped a bit to be bigger. So I didn't do too much to it. I just moved the fences out and moved the vertices to kind of make more sense as the gate covers the road. But I then realized how the fences end a little too abrupt for my liking. So I take that same gate and I merge all of the vertices except for one post altogether. And then simply just moved the extra vertice into, or yeah, vertice? I don't know. Back into the post to make this really nice just fence end. Uh, I could have used prop fences, but I don't have the prop line tool. I keep meaning to download it and I keep forgetting. So instead of having to exit out and load back into the game, I just decided to make do with what I had. I find these network fences to be pretty awesome. I use them all over the place. But yeah, so I made that one copy of the post, and then I just copied it over to all these other gates in order to create more of these fence posts. So I'm placing them at all of the entrances to buildings where the fence splits and at the corners. I suppose I could have placed more of these fence posts, especially like in the middle of these large sections of fence. But I'm lazy. uh, Excuse the big stutter there. I am not at all operating on a good computer by any stretch of the imagination. I'm rocking a 2070 Super Ti uh, with a rip-roaring Intel i7 3770. Yep. I believe the Intel i7 series is on the, like, 12,000 series now. So I'm about 9 years behind. I'd love to upgrade my computer, but it's a pre-built, and as a result, with what money I have had to spend on it, I've only been able to upgrade one component at a time. So when you have a motherboard that only supports DDR3 RAM, if I was going to upgrade to a better CPU, I'd have to essentially rebuild the whole computer. So we make do with what we have. That's why the graphics aren't amazing, and even when I jack them up to do screenshots and cinematics, it's still not great. But it gets the job done until I'm able to totally rebuild it in a long time. But yeah, so with the university being built, I decided I wanted to do further redevelopment of Lockport, specifically, or not Lockport, excuse me, the Fort of Auckton. Of course, this is now the City of Auckton as well, but just this older area that was established when the fort was established. So, a couple of times you could have seen me in previous episodes and in this one, kind of straightening out the grid, making it make more sense with the survey system, the grid survey that I've done a while back. Um, but yeah, so after straightening out some of the roads and deleting some of the older buildings, I'm coming through and uh, placing these houses which kind of just densify everything. The quote-unquote downtown of this neighborhood is being left more or less alone, simply because I think it looks fine. Um, and I mean, you still see these historical buildings surviving until modern days in a lot of these cities. That sort of Tudor style uh, plaster and crossbeam architecture. But yeah, not too terribly much to say here. Just I made a template off screen of buildings that I think would work well, and in general, I mean, I think it looks pretty damn good if I do say so myself. Of course, there's still a lot to be done to this city. I'm not going to leave it as this kind of a slum permanently, but as things get denser, as the city of Auckton builds itself up, we will see more and more change in these neighborhoods. But yeah, that's more or less it, I believe, for the university and redevelopment. I could be wrong, uh, but pretty soon here, I will be starting on detailing, quote unquote. But yeah, as I've mentioned before, detailing for the most part, especially in this older area, yeah, I'm starting it now, is mostly just going to be me placing fences around. I've gone on whole tangents before on why fences make for good and easy details. But yeah, just doing fences. This is the area right by the university on the forested side is very hilly. Much more hilly than I anticipated. I tried my best to kind of even out the terrain to make it less extreme, but, you know, c'est la vie. It's a quirk of the city. We take it. But yeah. Fences, they're great for adding a lot of detail without much effort, and it also tells a story of how the city has been developing over the past while, you know. Then I'm just going through and adding in some trees. I imagine that trees, for the most part, wouldn't be cut down unless they were needed for, you know, development or to clear space. And they always provide a nice bit of shade and just, you know, people like trees. I like trees. Wish we had more trees in modern cities. But yeah, after the tree brush is finished, I take the dirt decals that I love so much and start placing them around the place. Like I said, with the university, I'm trying my best to make it look very well manicured and nice, so I'm doing my best not to intrude too much on the university grounds with the dirt. I made those little pathways using the dirt texture with Surface Painter to doors and whatnot. Um, But yeah, that's it for the Fort Auckton area and the university. Here, one of my good friends has pointed out to me that it's a colonial American style city. There's not enough churches, and I'm inclined to agree. I've mentioned a couple of times that this is, of course, a fictional world based on our own, but still unlike ours in several ways. So I take off the cross decals from, or cross vertices from the church in order to make it look more generic. Of course, this is a very Christian style, dare I say, Southern style church, but uh, we can speculate on what they actually worship. But yeah. So after the church itself is not that big of a project, right? I took out a couple of houses to make room for it, and then just fenced off its property and placed well, I am placing a small little graveyard around the place. Um, I just realized that I never did get around to putting a fence in that alleyway. So, I mean, I suppose if you live in one of those houses, you can take a nice midnight stroll down the alleyway into the graveyard. That would definitely make for a whole plot line in a love story, wouldn't it? But yeah, just placing down a little dirt. I unfortunately did not have a door prop, so there's no way to get in that graveyard, but nobody has to know. So, I mentioned in the intro that the old colonial government was dissolved, as in previously the district of Auckton, that's not just the island, but the straits at large, was ruled by the West Odresh Company. And of course, like, there was still civil administration, right? But, for the most part, it was governed by a series of company administrators who ruled the colonies like a business in order to generate the maximum amount of profit for the crown. This was very typical of colonial administrations. I mean, hell, look at the British East India Company in India for a similar sort of parallel. Of course, Auckton is not a simple business venture like the East India Company was. Auckton is a settler colony where populations are intentionally resettled in order to develop new lands. So, with the change in direction from a exploitative, well, I mean, it still is exploitative, make no mistake, but from a business venture into an actual civil administration that's being put under control of the crown, we are seeing essentially Auckton turning into a crown colony. So, when it came time for the crown to properly exert its influence over its territory, then the old wooden colonial administration that was under the West Odresh Company simply would not do. They need actual areas to meet, to legislate, to do all the things a government does. So as a result, I took down the old Odresh Company building, and I'm building this one here. This is my second major usage of procedural objects, or I suppose third. I forgot about the church. And yeah, I tried to model this roughly on Independence Hall. You can see I'm really struggling to figure out how these windows work. And it's really difficult for me to grab all the vertices that I need in order to push the windows up into the actual window sills, make it a flat texture essentially. That way I can put the windows more flatly against the building. I really had thought that I cut the majority of this out, but it's here now, so we take it. Once again, I'm putting all these hedges around because they look nice, and I like hedges. And it also gives the administration a much bigger sense of prestige, in my opinion. Again, when it takes so much effort to grow and keep something manicured back then than it does now, having a manicured lawn, garden, etc., really goes a long way to show off your power, even if it isn't the most elaborate thing, especially compared to today. Um, as I recall, King Louis, one of the King Louis of France, had a elaborate garden at Versailles, simply to show off the wealth and prominence of his kingdom. And it's sort of a similar situation here. While the gardens of the university, of the estates, and of this new administrative building are not big at all, it still goes a long way to show the amount of effort they're putting into showing off, essentially. But yeah, after I did the main building and the hedges, I came in with these cobblestone decals and paved the first road in the city of Auckton, a momentous occasion. Um, I also got rid of the well and the small merchant square out front of the old administration building, and placed down that little fountain. It's the same fountain as is the one in the governor's administration, but it looks nice. So, yeah. I'm cleaning up some of these dirt decals. I keep some. I mean, it's a dirty colonial city. Of course, it has dirt all over the place. But, yeah, I still wanted to, like with the university, wanted to make this more prestigious. I found these little bushes and decided to uh, manicure the edges of these pathways and the road a little bit more. Once again, I'm coming in here with the red and yellow flowers, trying to make something a little more ornate, a little more decorative than simply just beds of flowers. I'm unsure if I like how I did this, but I think it makes an interesting pattern regardless. I center, like, some red flowers in the middle of a circle of the yellow flowers, and then copy that to, you know, just kind of make it look more like an intentional pattern. And then I try to sort of repeat it over here with the original rainbow of flowers that I had made earlier. Something in City Skylines that I've noticed is you always want to make it seem like what you're doing is intentional, uh, which is very difficult when sometimes you just don't know what you're doing. But yeah, as we approach this the end of this episode, thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I've been really enjoying all the comments and feedback that I've been getting over the last couple of episodes. Makes me really happy to see the series grow. But yeah, I have a Discord. I forgot to shout that out in the last episode, but it should be in the description. Please take a look. I also have a Patreon where you get some behind the scenes content. Patreons also get access to special channels in my Discord. So, as I go into these cinematics, I hope you have a good one. This is the Kumu Courtway, signing out.